Hello everyone and thanks for joining. Today in our short webinar series we have another topic in the area of workflows. We want to show you our action builder and we're going to the general features of the action builder. There will be more short webinars about some additional topics in the area of workflows. So yeah. First of all, today speaking, it's myself, Matthias Walter, Chief Product Officer at skybow, and then in this series, the next webinar is about provisioning. It will be held on December 7th, so if you like, you can already register right now using the QR code here, and we will show you how you can transfer your solutions without code using our provisioning engine. So that will be on December 7th at 4:30 p.m. Good. The skybow action builder, the thing I'm going to show you today is the different action types that we have and how you can easily copy an action or a control from one place to another. And also you are able to disable specific actions, so if you don't need them, how you can add a condition. Some of the actions are possible to execute asynchronously, and we also have the option to add variables to use later on in the workflow or to set them later on based on some outputs of previous actions. For example, using, second last topic, the action outputs and how we can import and export all the actions to a file. Those are the topics of today, and yeah, I would say we jump directly into the demo. For that, I want to first show you the scenario that I will use here. It's based on our employee onboarding demo or template, so to say. So we have a couple of templates. If you start with Solution Studio, you can create a solution based on a template, and the employee onboarding is one of them. It's based on a recruitment tracker list. That's the one here, where you add your candidates. And we have an onboarding list. It's a task list, a to-do list with some onboarding tasks. They have some due dates when they have to be done, and we assign them to an employee that's then connected with a standard SharePoint lookup. So the scenario will be, I have my candidates here, and one day I'm going to hire them. And at that point, when I'm going to hire them, we have an onboarding task templates list. And in here, I'm right now it's only a few. We've added a couple of to-dos, and it's also added when they have to be done. It's the same what we can define in the onboarding list itself, and the positions. So you see we can here edit. So it's added to one or many positions. So not all tasks have to be done for every position. So for example, do order an AWS CC license only for the designer, an MS project license only for the project manager. Introduction has to be done for everyone. Probation period feedback is also for everyone. And an M365 license is also needed for everyone. But that means, let's say I have a designer, then only these 4 actions or these 4 tasks should be added. And Therefore, in the process, I have this Jason Bowen. It's the position designer. We sent them an offer, and on our that's a skybow form. That's what we showed in the previous webinar about our form designer. We have one action here on the top. Those are so-called command bar actions. We can add them as many as we want, and we can define what should happen in the background. And the one where we have a little process or a little some actions behind this is set active and start the onboarding. And what this is doing, it sets first the progress to active, and then it gets all the tasks from the task templates, which is for the position designer, and for each task template it will create an actual task. So that's all done on this button click. So I click. First of all, I have to give some additional metadata. So I can say, okay, this guy will start on November 1st, or no, maybe later, December 1st. And the manager should be Sophie. Okay, because this person will also get an email about these tasks that they have to be done. And now I have this button on top, set active and start onboarding. When I do that one, now it retrieves these 4 actions or these 4 tasks. You see, we have 4. And now we have an additional tab. We see the tasks here. They have all been calculated. So for example here, before joining, in my definition, it's always 1 day before they join. So December 1st, November 30th is 1 day before. First day is December 1st, the team introduction. And after 60 days, so meaning 2 months later, we have the probation period feedback. Okay, so we see them here, they have all been added. And Sophie, I'll show you office.com, quickly opening the Outlook of Sophie. She also retrieved an email. New onboarding task for Jason Bowen have been added for you. How this email look like is all configurable, sure. And I can click here, and I'm coming to the same place where I see the tasks. And of course from here I will go through, complete them, okay, next. So that's how the process will work. But now let's jump into the backend on how this is configured. Here in Solution Studio, it's all done on the form here. We log in. Oh, almost there. Here we go. So we have an additional form added. That's this start onboarding. That's the panel which was opened when I clicked active and start the onboarding. So that's where we had to add the manager, the date, the starting date. And this is an additional form that I've added. And I have this button here on top. It's configurable here on the actions, command bar. We do have something very similar on form load. So if you have form load, we have before the form is loaded and after. But it's the same action builder behind this one here. It's just a different place or execution time. It's when the form is loading. But here we have some buttons. We have these 2, cancel and set active and start onboarding. The button itself has a title, an icon we can choose from from an icon set, and then we can configure the actions. And that's the action builder. So basically the action builder has a couple of actions, and if we look at them, we do have a condition control, which is, I can simply, from this action list, I can easily whether drag and drop these actions here, place it there, delete it again, or we can double click. Double click will add them at the very bottom. So if I double click, it's added down here. Or let's say before we close the form, because closing or redirecting away is should always be the last action. So it has been added here. It's just a condition you can add, and then yeah, you can whether do actions when the condition is yes or when it's no. And then again, you simply drag the actions inside like this, and then you have them in here. We can always expand and collapse them. Just delete them once again. Yeah, and also rename them just with a double click. You can give it another title, or on the other hand, if you don't want to have a large title, you can also add a note. And in the note, you can say, okay, the set progress to active, for example. Because if everything is collapsed, then you still see this description. And that's like the note. Yeah. So yeah, we have these actions, we can add them. Every action, maybe good to know, has a little info icon where you can jump to the actual documentation about this action. And also the action builder introduction is linked here, or here on the very top of the action builder we have also a link to the introduction. So if you want to read more about the action builder in general, it's all described here once again. Next to that, we can easily enable or disable specific actions. So if you want to test something, you can simply disable an action and then it will not be executed. Or it's also good, let's say you have added an action like this. Theoretically, there are some required fields, but it can happen. You want to save, okay, it doesn't work because you have to specify some of the fields. But sometimes you've added the action, you started to configure it, but you're not able to completely configure it, or you're not sure yet, whatever, simply disable it. It will stay in here, but it's not needed to fill it out. So you can just leave it here, put it somewhere else or whatever, and yeah, that's very easy to just activate and deactivate them here. So you don't have to say condition false, whatever. It's just like this. So next to that, I showed you the condition control, but next to the condition control, every action itself is also having the option of adding a condition. So for each action, we can specify a condition, which brings up our expression builder. But here I don't want to go into detail because there will be a separate webinar about this expression builder. But just to give you an idea, you have access to all the fields, and you could say, okay, only do that action if the progress is equal to active, just as an example. That would be a condition, and once the condition is added, you will see a little fx here, which is not available on all the other actions. That's how you can see, okay, on this action there is a condition, and if you click on the fx, you get back to that dialog here. So if you remove it again, the FX button is gone, and you would have to go here to add the condition again. So that's, yeah, in most cases you would probably go for a condition control, which allows you to add several actions, one condition for several actions. You don't have to add the condition on every action separate. Yeah, but that's still possible to add a condition on one specific action. Then some of the actions, like the document generator, for example. As well, this one, I will not go into detail about that one because there will be another webinar about this specific action, which is quite powerful, and yeah, we can fill half an hour with that one only. But to generate a document could take 1 to maybe 3 seconds. It depends on your template. So if you have a big template with lots of placeholders in it, it can take longer. So in that case, you could, and that's only on the document generator, and on the send mail email, we have the option to execute this action asynchronously, which means this action will be executed. It will start that action, but it will not wait until this is finished to proceed. So it will directly start it, and will directly go to the form, save form action. And you see that now with the dashed line here, and also the dashed arrow. Now this is executed asynchronously in the background then. So, because let's say you have 10 actions, 5 times you send an email, 5 documents are generated, and this already takes the end user like 15 to 30 seconds to wait, and that's not what you want to have. When you click a button, you don't want to wait for that long, so you can easily run that async. And you can always go back and say run it synchronous, because the main, let's say, downside of it is you don't have any feedback for the user. If it would fail, if it would if the email would fail to send, or if the document is having some errors in the template, you will not see that as an end user. And if it's in sync, then you would see a message appearing on top what went wrong. And it would not proceed with the rest of the actions. That's also a main difference. Good. So next feature is the variables. We have a button up here, and you can specify variables like this. You add var1, var2, and you could already initialize them here. You don't have to, but you can. Simply go to this expression builder and put in any calculation, and it would automatically set this variable already right now. Or you just define the variables, and later on you can use them. So for example, there is another action type, set variable. You can use them anywhere in the process. For example here, then you see these 2 variables, and you can whether give it a value here, which doesn't make sense because then you could have it set already up here, but you can also go into the expression builder, and then for example in the actions you could access some output values, and that's already the jump to the next topic, action outputs. So you will always see previous actions and their outputs down here under actions. On the place right now I just had 2 actions before. So the save form, which gives you the item ID of the saved item, and here we are getting the onboarding tasks, and I can access the collection of the onboarding tasks that I get. So I could take that one as it is, and would set this into the variable. And later on, somewhere down here, doesn't matter where, we can always access the variables. It's next to the actions here. We also have variables, and then you see these variables. And yeah, simply double click them and you can access the variable from here. The value of the variable which is stored at the moment. Yeah, let's delete that once again. Maybe if you have a look right now at the process, what we have here, when we click the set active button, first of all, we've used the set field value. That's used in the form to set a field. Now I'm using, you see all the columns from the list here, and I simply set it to active. That's my first action. Second one is I'm saving the form. So it was this form where we had to add the manager and the start date. We save that form. And next is we use the save form is an action type. And the next is the get items. With the get items action, we can say, okay, from which list? We have this onboarding task templates list. And here with the query, we have a query builder for that. We can specify which items I want to retrieve from that list. And here in the where, that's my filter. So I can add additional groups or rows. So another row, and so on. But in my scenario, I simply have to get, and that's what I've configured here, give me all tasks where the positions contains the position from the current candidate. So here we see all the candidate fields, and each candidate, as we saw here, each candidate has a position. And this position here, designer, I'm passing here as a placeholder. That's it's designer. I can show you here, test. That is what is returned for that expression. Really helpful. We can choose an item and just give it a try and test it. Designer will be the output, and it would check designer should be in that position field. That's what we've done to get these 4 items. And again here, I could check, let's say for JSON, which is designer, I could give it a try, run it, and I see these 4 template tasks which will be returned. So we have the designer position here, and in the other place as well, the introduction, probation, order license, and the CC, Adobe CC license. So those are the 4 items which are returned on this get items action. And after this, I'm using our loop control. That's the second one here. A loop control needs to have an array, an iterating array. And the iterating array can be anything from whether the output of the onboarding task or a multi-lookup, a multi-people picker, a multi-choice. It can be just an array defined in the variable. It's really up to you. In my case, I'm taking the output of this one. That's the thing here, actions, output, onboarding task, items. That's the thing here. Double click, that's it. This will give me an array of items, and here I'm going to loop over them, so the 4 items, and here add list item, I'm going to add a new onboarding task for each item. So I can access, again here, I can access the previous action, which is the loop. And in the loop, I can access the current item. And then with a point, I can access all the values from the current item. In my case, it's the title, the completed by, manager is taken from the manager field. The employee is the link to the employee, which is the candidate. So I can set it to the ID. And then the due date is actually calculated. It's a simple switch. I'm looping or switching through the completed by, which can be before joining, first day, week 1. So here I'm converting the text first day, week 1 with the actual logic. So I'm taking the start date and I'm adding -1 day, or I'm adding 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. That's the logic behind to really set the date itself. This one here is JavaScript. So plain JavaScript. If you know how to write JavaScript, then that's how you can do it here. Last but not least, we're going to send an email to the manager, and the send email action is simple. It's can be defined the to field, CC if needed, the reply address, the subject, which can be dynamic as well, having a title field in here, and then a simple body. And here, Visivik, you can just write, make it bold, make it, and the link I've also made dynamic back here. That's the HTML which is generated, and then somewhere at the end here, it's this simple href, and then I was using some placeholders where I passed the ID for the display form. So that's my simple email. I can for sure add anything else, and it will be sent to this person up here. And yeah, last but not least, here we do a little trick for the tabs. So once it's done, it will automatically load the task tab. Therefore, we're using a window variable. We set this to load task tab equals true using the execute script action, which is available here, execute script. So any JavaScript you can add here. I'm setting this window variable, and I will use that after I close the form. It would make a reload here on the display form, because that's where we start and open that start onboarding form. It's basically here. Once I click active and start onboarding, we simply open a form, this one, start onboarding, and we reload once it's closed. After that reload, we have that window variable, and here we're using the form load actions. You see I have the 3 tabs, and once I reload, it would show me the details tab once again, but I want to show the task tab. That's done on the form load. Here, after the form is loaded, we have a condition, and it would check if this variable is set. We can also pass it through the URL. That's the second check here, but that's the one I'm using. If it's set, then use the redirect to tab action. That's another action that we have, and we could say, okay, redirect to the open tasks tab, and after that delete the window variable so that it doesn't open all the time on that task tab. So here with the combination of these, we can also really do that and transfer it to another form. So from this one to that one. One thing a last thing to show here is how you can copy, export, import, all these things. So basically actions itself, let's say this one, which is configured, I can drag it. That's one option to copy it. And now if you press and hold the control key, you see it, there is a little plus which appears. And I can, keeping the control key pressed, but now let's release the mouse, and you see it created a copy. Similar to other places where you can easily make a copy. So it's the action one-to-one copied, and yeah, now I can change this if needed and put it somewhere else. But that's the easiest way to make a copy. The second one is like this. In the context menu, you have the copy option here. Click it. Then you see the redirect tab is here, the action. And I could, again, drag and add it to the designer here. This even works cross action builder, but therefore you have to allow, very first time you open up the action builder, it asks you to, if the browser is allowed to access the clipboard. That's the one here, clipboard read access allowed. If you do not give that, then you can only use that copy functionality within the same action builder. If you give it, if you allow this, then this action will stay in the action builder even if I go somewhere else. Let's say I'm going to the onboarding again. Here, you see the action is still here. I can drag it. Okay, I mean, I don't have these tabs on my form, that's why it will not work like this. But the whole action would be available if I would have the tabs here as well. It would be the same and configured here. Last but not least, we have the export import functionality up here, and this really exports everything which is on the table here. So if I click export, it gives me a JSON file, and this JSON I can start and import. Let's say I would delete, or I would have another, no, let's do it different. I would add a new action, give it a title, configure, and now I can say import. Click on import, choose my file here, and all my actions are here again with all the configuration. It's all one-to-one in here again, because the export really keeps everything, all the actions there. Good, so those are really the basics from the action builder. Maybe very quick through the actions. We saw condition, the loop, close form, which is available on forms only for sure. To close a form, a panel, we can execute any script. It's JavaScript. We can redirect to a tab, save a form, set the field value. That's all been used. We have a send HTTP request action, which is there to call any service, any REST API, whatever, with get, post, put, delete, and JSONP. You can call another web service and so on. We have an open form action to open a form from a library. So by default you have these 3 forms, but if you have additional ones you can use that action to open that additional form. You can choose a panel, the panel size, passing an ID for the new form you don't have to. Open a web page, so any external URL, whatever, that's the one here. We can reload the form. We have 2 send mail actions, one for internal emails and one for external to any email address. but yeah, another webinar about that one, because that is there are more options to show. Show a message is actually quite helpful for the end user to see what's happening. So you can show a message in the status bar, type in anything, what's happening, we started the onboarding, and so on. You can have it as an info on success or warning on error. So just interaction with the end user to show what's happening. Quite helpful. And then the standard SharePoint actions like add list item, copy document, copy folder, create folder, delete, to get the items we've used. The move document. Starting a workflow is for the old 2013 workflows only. If you want to start a flow, then search for skybow flow in Google, and the second one here right now, depends, is an article describing how to do that, how to start a Microsoft Flow, configuring the using the HTTP request action. That's described here. That's possible as well. Or if you have a 2013 workflow, it has to be registered on the list, then you can choose it. I don't have one here. That's why it's empty. Update an item or upload a document. Set the variable and the document generator, which generates a document based on a docx. You can create a document having metadata from the SharePoint list item inside, or even a whole list of items, whatever. But again, this one will be a separate topic. Yeah, those are all the actions, and we do have some actions running in the background, but as well this one will be another topic. Here in the background we have the scheduled and triggered actions. Good. Coming back here, those were the topics for today. Action Builder in general. That's it. I would say if you have any feedback or questions, you can write as always, whether to me or at info@skybow.com. Yeah, I want to thank you for your time and your interest. If you want to have a demo, you can also contact us. And thanks for watching. Bye.